welcome back. I'm Tedward. Welcome to beautiful sunny Southern California, and welcome to the newly refreshed Acura MDX Type S. This is a 2025 model year, and this is the latest and greatest from the luxury Honda brand. I'm so excited to drive this with you today out here on some beautiful roads, and it is jam-packed with fun upgrades and features. First off, let's talk about power. 355 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque from its 3-liter turbo V6. It is a little monster, and it's fun that you can still get a really exciting powertrain in 2025 because a lot of cars are going purely hybrid or turbo 4 cylinders. No. This is jam-packed with some Honda goodness. For 2025, there's also a new upgrade for the sound system. You can get a 31 speaker Bang and Olufsen system. So this is a rolling sound studio. I have to say, if you have an Acura dealership nearby, you gotta go and test out the audio system. You need to hear it for yourself. It's absurd. It's 1700 watts. And man, you can tell we're on some good roads today because we've got the motorcycles out here enjoying the bends. And we're gonna be doing the same thing in the Type S today. So first, let's take a look around the exterior. There's some upgrades and changes for the refresh. You've got a slightly different pattern on this grille. You've got some blacked out accents, and they made the headlights and taillights a little darker, so they just look a little more sinister. I think the style of this is fantastic. But for 2025, they've also upgraded a lot of the technological features. They've got Acura Watch. So instead of just having a camera up there to help you with your adaptive cruise control, you've also got a big old radar guy up here and radar on the sides, on the front and back, because this can now auto lane change while you're using your cruise control. It's pretty impressive, and we're gonna play with that a bit today. Up front, we have some big old Brembos now painted red. They're 4-pot stoppers. They look awfully good on this thing. And gluing us to the road, keeping us in check, is a 275 section tire on these gorgeous 21-inch wheels. Around back, like I told you, they made the taillights just a bit darker, and it has these monster quad exhaust tips. This looks so good. And remember, this is a real exhaust. This is not a fascia. I mean, yes, these are some big old bulky tips, but this isn't like a bumper cover. So kudos to Acura for doing that, because I'm so sick of seeing plastic shrouds. They've also got this clever little diffuser back here. It needs to be your practical daily driver, and that means it's a 3-row SUV. You can fit all the kids, their friends, your stuff. Look at this nice little compartment back here. And if you need more space, you throw this 3rd row back down. Let's start in the rear. Look at this, captain's chairs. This is very nice. And when you're not using this middle seat, it becomes a pocket. So, hey, room for my phone, room for cups and drinks. Very good. You can recline this pretty darn far. Very comfortable place to be. Giant panoramic sunroof. And you've got this kind of wood trim accents. Now, you don't want to have to put all those silly suction cup things to keep your kids cool. So there you go. We've got built-in sunshades in the doors. Check out the climate control back here. So everyone complains about Civic and saying, Honda, how are you not giving us rear climate control? Well, in the Acura, you certainly get all the things, plus 3-stage heated seats for the outboard rears. Now, that 3rd row, not the largest in the world. I don't necessarily know that I want to put myself back there, but you could certainly use it for a short trip. USB-A chargers on each side for those rear passengers, very thoughtful, and USB-C down here. Kind of interesting that they mix and match that USB-A and USB-C, but we're here for it. We're still kind of living in that transitionary world of all these things. If you pop that up, there you go. You've got your middle seat, not the biggest, but hey, it'll get the job done. Before we get up front, let's take a look under the hood. On nice hood struts, there we go. Look how low this is mounted. We love to see it. It's a proper front engine, definitely in front of that front axle. But there you've got your Acura badged cover to help dull out some of that injector noise, and our twin scroll turbo design. So This is pretty stout. Now, it's not going to be the fastest thing in the world, but what we like about Honda products is that they don't usually come and wow you with big power figures. They're not going to come out and say, hey, we're the absolute fastest 0 to 60, but what they do is they have great chassis design. They make these cars fun to drive, enjoyable to drive, and stable to drive. The Type S also comes with an adaptive air suspension, so we'll see if it adds to the ride comfort and handling characteristic quality of the Type S. Now, to keep it quiet, this is now a more insulated cabin. I think they say 10% quieter than it was in the previous non-facelift version. Oh, we've got some friends. And that's going to be due to a little more insulation in the doors as well as laminated rear windows. So it appears that we're not the only ones who found a beautiful view up here today. Why don't we get out of here? We'll start it up with our engine start stop button. We've got our new Google built-in system here as well, and they've updated the center console just a bit to add a little more space for stuff. There's a wireless charging pad down here, Apple CarPlay, and then this new system, so much faster than the previous system, which is really, really nice to enjoy. To put it in drive, we still have kind of this old school Acura system. This is what we would have found on the NSX. We have a few different drive modes to select from. So let's turn and hold and go into Sport Plus. And we'll also hit this, so that puts our transmission in sport mode. Up here we've got our tack front and center and our boost gauge over here for fun. This 10-speed still has some long gearing. And I'm curious how this air suspension is going to hold up. This is just the right amount of power. It feels really stout. Brakes, confidence inspiring. Super handling, all-wheel drive, doing a good job torque vectoring. And the steering wheel, oh, I love the shape, the way it kind of falls in my hands. It's got that NSX style where you've got nice grips. I can hear all the things moving around the cabin. I did my best to secure what I could, but so while it's not gonna stun you with speed like an X5M or something like that, it's really well composed. And that's the beautiful thing about Honda products, is that usually there's no like big star of the show where they're just gonna wow you with power. What they are gonna do though is they're gonna give you a really nice package that just feels cohesive. And this nice Toyota actually let me pass earlier. So we won't bully them at all. We want to be nice to the fellas who help us out on other roads. But yeah, I mean, handling wise, this MDX Type S, it's no joke. It still feels a little tall. It's not a complete sports car, but it's a really nice package. Something that I feel like I could use a little more of is steering feel. Oh, what a legend. Thank you. Yeah, the steering weight is really nice, but I don't get a lot of feedback. I'm not feeling a whole lot. And I would like just a little more of that steering feel. But, you know, this is a tricky car. It's doing its best to be everything to everybody. That's not an easy thing to do because it also has to be a luxury car. And when you're playing the luxury sports car game, there are always going to be some conceits. Man, these guys have a cool job just ripping dump trucks down this road. Fairly responsive on the paddles. I mean, it's certainly not a DCT, but this 10-speed auto reacts nicely. Lots of good mid-range torque. I don't have to go to redline. Oh man, I hope these guys have working brakes. Needs to dig itself out of that hole if I hold it at low RPMs, but mid-range is really good. Does a great job in a transition. I mean, it's not like hiding all of its weight. I'm sure there's a water bottle over there. But yeah, it's fun to drive. It doesn't necessarily beg me. It's not begging me to be bad to it, but it is allowing me to have a spirited and enjoyable drive. And the fact that it's doing that while also being really well insulated, like, it's funny, in this particular context, I'd love to have a little more engine noise, but when I'm out on the highway or driving around in my luxury Acura, I respect the fact that it is quiet and more insulated than its pre-refresh predecessor. Let's see how she gets off the line. Definitely quick enough. It's not going to stun you. It's not going to shock your passengers with power and speed, but it has enough to get the job done. And the character of this V6 is such that it's pretty enjoyable. Let's put it in comfort mode. Ooh, yeah, I can feel that throttle mapping dulling out a little bit. Suspension gets a lot more cushy. There's way more body roll. Yeah, this adaptive air suspension varies pretty greatly between modes. Let's check that out in Sport Plus. Still a little body roll, but much more controlled and not as wallowy. Let's go back to comfort. We'll get out on the highway in a little bit, but right now I am very well insulated in terms of NVH and noises. I have very little road noise. This is not a quiet road either. There's a little bit of road noise just from the tires. But because they've insulated it a little more, it just gets to be like you're in your little Acura cocoon. The big marketing points on the MDX Type S are going to be about this engine and this sound system. But let's not forget, super handling all-wheel drive, which does wonders in putting power and vectoring it to the right spot. This means that, like, when you are pulling out of a corner, you can get on power pretty early because it's going to route that power to the right spot. So if I get on power here, it's not just spinning up those front wheels and causing me to understeer. It's actually going to start vectoring power to the rear outside wheel to bring me around. And that just makes driving more outrageously good because it means you have more grip more of the time. And it's pretty seamless. I mean, you can feel what it's doing, but in your head, you're thinking, oh, I couldn't possibly get on throttle here because I'll understeer, but you won't. Because SH all-wheel drive is going to sort it out for you in a way that's just going to find the available grip without sending you away. And the other star of the show here is this adaptive air suspension. Now, there's always a little bit of trade-off with air suspension because it's geared to allow for a large dynamic range of changes. So it means that you're in comfort mode, you're going to be in a really nice place. You're going to be in somewhere that's cushy and lovely. We see this in suburban high country, for example. But it also means that when you stiffen it up, it's not always the best reacting in a corner. But in the case of an MDX, an SUV, a 3-row SUV, I think it does a really good job of maintaining stability. Now, the thing about this chassis, it's a phenomenal chassis, but it's always going to be tuned to keep that rear end really dialed and planted. It's never going to allow for slip of that rear end. I mean, I'm not turning everything off because we're on our first press drive of this thing, but it would be kind of nice if this had like a little bit of lift-off oversteer and allowed me to kind of dance with the rear. So I do feel like I'm just managing the front axle when I'm driving it in a enthusiastic manner. I wish I was getting a little more feedback from the steering wheel. It changes the weight between Comfort and Sport Plus very similar to what, you know, a Civic Type R will do. But I don't get much granularity through the road. The tires will tell me though, because these are fairly loud tires, so the tires are going to give me indications of limits. I think they did a great job tuning these brakes. They feel like they have the right bite point, they're the right modulation. It's really intuitive. It's something that you don't think about until you say, hey, tell me what you think of the brakes, because it's so intuitive that it sort of disappears. It's giving me a lot of stopping power, and that gives me the confidence to drive it with a little enthusiasm. But I can also modulate it enough that if I want my passengers to be comfortable and not get whiplash from extreme race pads slamming down every time I kiss those rotors, well, they're not going to feel that. They're just going to feel what I want them to feel. I think in Sport Plus, it's fun and it's tight, but the throttle mapping in Sport Plus is just a little too sensitive. It means that you don't get as much resolution. So I think I prefer Sport mode for this reason. Yeah, that's much better. You can modulate that throttle a lot better. Let's get it out on the freeway and see what it do and not get hit by this tractor trailer. We love merging brake lights. All right, these are pretty loud highways, or freeways, I should say. We're in California. I'm getting very little noise intrusion. So whatever sound deadening they've added to this is certainly contributing to a more relaxed experience out here. We've got our cruise control going. We can adjust all that good stuff. It's adaptive. It's going to just maintain distance. They've retuned this recently, so it's better than it once was, which means it's not hitting the brakes as aggressively as it used to. We've just seen this in the new Honda Civic Hybrid, and I'm quite impressed with the results. Then we can also do our lane keeping assist. Now, this is a technology that probably not going to be talking about, but you have to keep your hands on the wheel, okay? You can't just put this on and let go. It's not a self-driving car. But in the past, you had to put a little bit of force on the steering wheel in order to tell it that you were still there, that you were still driving. Now this is a capacitive touch steering wheel, so you don't actually have to put any force, you just have to have your hand on it. I'm not hitting the brakes, I'm not doing anything, it's doing its thing. But that's great, because in my Civic, when I'm driving, sometimes it'll say, hey, put your hands on the wheel. My hands are on the wheel, I'm just not fighting it. So now I don't have to intentionally fight the steering wheel to let it know that I exist and that I'm actually behind the wheel. Capacitive touch steering wheel, we like that. Now let's see if we can get it to do a lane change for us. I'm gonna hold this here, you see that light up? Nope, it doesn't like it. It saw that car behind me, it didn't like the pass. I'm definitely got room. All right, there we go. A lane change all its own. It did it, not me. Let's let this car pass on the left and then we'll try another one. Very cool. It's maybe not the most necessary thing in the world, but I'm glad, because what this tells me is that Honda and Acura are getting in the game, and that they are going to be able to do sort of that semi-autonomous thing in the not too distant future. So that gives me hope for what's going on. But kudos to them, because, well, let's see, will it do lane change unavailable? I think it doesn't like that guy's there. So it's definitely never going to put you in a situation where it's uncomfortable or where you're uncomfortable making a lane change. It's going to do the safest changes possible. But otherwise, this new adaptive cruise control tuning, really nice. Let's see, this guy's slowing up. It's not just hitting the brakes on me, which is great. In previous iterations of these types of systems with Honda, they'll get on those brakes real hard. That's nice. That was smooth. That's what I would do. I'm going to get into the pedal a little bit just because it was going to wait. I've been in situations with my Type R where it genuinely feels like it's about to brake check somebody, or it does brake check somebody because it just hits the brakes instead of coasting when it could. That's a little uncomfortable and unnerving. So I've got to give them credit for all of the new tuning and dialing in their adaptive cruise control, because it's really important that it works well all of the time. If I were to give any criticisms, I think it just needs more steering feel. But like, you know, that's not isolated to this vehicle. Most cars today are a little numb in the steering department. On Acura Tedward Type S, it is not, but it's fun to drive, and it'll get your kids to school and all the stuff up to the lake house or whatever the heck you do on the weekends. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.